Was anybody really asking for this sequel? I mean, was anybody really asking for the original? No, but it kicked ass, so maybe the sequel will too? The Equalizer 2 is the sequel to the original Equalizer that came out a few years ago, starring Denzel Washington and directed by Anton Fuqua. Anton Fuqua, better known as the director of Training Day, also with Denzel Washington. The sequel picks up a little while after the original movie ended, where we find Denzel's character fully accepting his role as the Equalizer, a guy who just drives around and helps people that are in need. When a bad thing happens to an old friend of Denzel's, he goes after the people that did this bad thing. I'm trying to avoid spoilers here, but you probably kind of know what that bad thing is. There's a few other smaller subplots that go on throughout the movie, but ultimately that's the synopsis of the plot. Bad people did bad thing to friend of Denzel. Denzel gets mad and goes after bad people. They go back and forth and have a climactic showdown. Nothing really unexpected here. And that is one of my problems with the film. There is nothing that's really unexpected. That was one of the things I really loved about the first movie. I didn't really expect the first movie to be anything more than just a throwaway film, but it turned out to be a really interesting, fun, awesome, and brutal film that I really enjoyed. I was totally taken by surprise, and I didn't always know where it was going from scene to scene. It was a really great, fun film, and I strongly recommend you check it out. The sequel, though, is really missing a lot of that the original had. It really seems as if in the original, they had a story they wanted to tell. And it seems like in this one, it's more like they have a story that they have to tell. Almost like somebody said, hey, the first one was a success, so let's make a second one. Even though the first one really doesn't set up any type of sequel, and it'd be just fine as a standalone film, they made a sequel anyway. I'm not saying that there wasn't room for a sequel to be made, and if the right story came along, it could be made, but in comparison to the original, I don't think that this was the right story. So what I liked about the film. Denzel is still great in this role as this character. He brings just enough subtle nuance to the table to make the character interesting and fun to watch. In the hands of a lesser actor, the character would have probably been played much bigger and lost a lot of that which makes him interesting, and would have become generic and a lot less interesting. The rest of the acting in the movie is fine too. There's not any bad performances, but none of it's really going to knock your socks off either. There's a few of them that kind of borderline on ham-fisted, but overall everybody does fine. Something else I really liked about the movie was the action scenes. Much like the first one, they are brutal. And every time he walks into a room and clicks on his little watch to see how long it's going to take him to kick everybody's ass, the movie kicks into high gear and has its absolute best scenes. These are those fuck yeah moments that you're really here to see. Overall, all the action in the movie is done very well. It's extremely entertaining and on par with most of what was shown in part 1. And now for what I thought could have been a little better in the movie. The core story is fine, but it takes quite a while to get started. At its core, it's a basic revenge tale. We've seen it play out before. And that's fine, everybody likes revenge movies, but this one doesn't really offer up anything new. And it does take quite a while to actually get to the meat of the story. It seemed like part of the problem was that the story arc that they had for this character wasn't big enough to fill a whole entire movie. So they drug out the first half of the movie to fill in what they were missing. There's a couple little subplots they throw in there, which are okay, but nothing really great. They're more or less predictable, and one in particular involving a young teen did seem a little heavy-handed when it got to that subplot's climax. Now granted, something with that subplot does tie into the end, but it really didn't have to. I think they just kind of tied that subplot to the end just to kind of give it a little bit of connective tissue throughout the movie. The movie's predictable too, like really predictable. There's not much that happens in this one that you're not going to see coming from a mile away. That bad thing that I was talking about earlier, you see that way before it happened. They telegraph it all over the place. There's parts when this character just walks in and the things that they say and the way the camera shoots them and just the way the movie frames them overall, you know it. I was sitting there watching it, and as that was happening, I just looked over to the person that I was watching the movie with and said, they're dead. And it's not just that. Pretty much everything else that happens in the movie, you know long before it happens. Now that doesn't mean the movie's not entertaining. It's still a good time and it is fun, but it's not as good as it could be, and it's nowhere near as good as the original. And a lot of that does have to do with the fact that you know everything that's going to happen before it happens. Something else in the movie that I really wasn't crazy about was how much more light it shed on Denzel Washington's character and his past. In the first movie, he was much more shrouded in darkness and mysterious. You didn't really know anything about his past. You got an idea that he had a past and there was some way that he learned all this stuff he knows, but it never really told you specifically what that was, and it gave his character more of an air of mystery. And while, yeah, there's a part of you that says, I want to know more about that, why is this character that way? When you do find out those whys, the character's just not as interesting anymore. There's too much light that's been shed on his past, and he's lost some of that mysteriousness about himself. And it does make the character not quite as intriguing. He also uses a lot more gadgets in this one. In the original, he worked at a hardware store like Home Depot, and he made everything on the fly like MacGyver style. It was really neat to see how he would use the things in the environment around him to construct something on the fly to combat the bad guys. In this one, he doesn't really do that. He busts out some high-tech gadgets here and there from, I guess, his past, and it just kind of makes the character a little bit more generic. I really like that unique style of using the environment and the things in the environment around him to his advantage. Really made him stand out as a character and made the action scenes more interesting as well. When you would see him construct these things from household objects in the movie, you just kind of felt like, yeah, I could do that. I mean, in this one, you feel like, yeah, I could buy that. It's just not as interesting. There's also a lot more globe-trotting in this one. The original one took place pretty much in one area. This one is in other countries and cities and states and just kind of all over the place. I mean, I don't have a problem with that so much, but it kind of went along with that whole bigger is better thing that it seemed like they were going for with this movie, when bigger isn't always better. I didn't really need to know that much more about his past. I didn't need him going other places and globe-trotting all over the place and putting on disguises to save people. I didn't need him to have James Bond gadgets to combat the bad guys. No, I liked it the way he was. I feel like they could have kept those character traits with a better story, and it would have elevated the movie much higher. Overall, The Equalizer 2 isn't bad. It's okay. Compared to the original, as it will be, no, it doesn't stand up. But if you can look past its flaws, it is a good time. You'll have fun with it. Nobody was really asking for it, and it was unnecessary, but it is a good time. If you don't have anything to do for the night and you're looking to just turn your brain off and have a good time, check it out on Netflix. It'll entertain you for 2 hours, and you'll have a fairly good time while doing it. So there it is, guys, my review of The Equalizer 2. If you enjoyed and want more content like this, hit that subscribe button and help my little channel grow. If you liked what I had to say, give me a thumbs up. If not, let me know in the comments below why. And as always, I'll see you guys next time.
Who are you, Jackie Chan?
Really though, while this movie's okay, anytime you see Denzel click on the timer on his watch, you know shit's about to get brutal. And it's awesome.